Hey everyone, I'm super excited today to have with us a very dear friend and a very special guest. Um, Introductions, I'm even at a loss of words how to introduce our star for today's conversation. Today we have the absolute honor to talk with Yaron. Yaron is one of the co-founders of a phenomenal company called Lightricks. If you have not heard of them, I highly advise to go Google them. The chances are you're probably using one of their apps on your phone. Not even a question about it. Lighttrick was founded in 2013, has raised over $300 million. That's insane. Absolutely insane. But today's story is not about, it's obviously going to be about Lightricks, but today is about Yaron. Who Yaron is, what makes him the man he is, what are the lessons you learned till he got to, and what are the tricks, and what are the hobbies that he has and he learned that makes him a better man today. Yaron is also an incredible father, and to a beautiful child, and a great husband, from what I'm told. But we're about to learn everything about that. I'm super excited to have Yaron here with us to share with us his journey and all the lessons. So Yaron, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Frank.
As Yaron, we're going to get honest, and we're going to get transparent. We're going to get vulnerable. We're going to do some heavy reflection. And I have so many questions, for incredible company, but also incredible guy you are. But have you ever took the time to really reflect and the past journey, which has been almost a decade already, almost, and realize what you built, what you've accomplished, how far you personally have come? You ever took that time to reflect?
Yeah, it's always really tricky, right? Because you're so busy with the challenges you're facing, and building a startup is really intensive feat, right? You're constantly growing. The company is growing. The challenges are shifting. So every time you get something right, you're starting to build on top of that, and then you have further challenges you need to tackle. And usually it's very easy to get very much into the details, into the tactics, and not look on the entire road that you've gone through in this almost last 10 years. But sometimes, in these occasions, for example, when you go and do some interview, you talk to someone from the outside who observed Lightricks for the last few years, etc. It's a really nice way to have some reflection on the road and the things we've been through.
Wow. Just to think about what you've been through and the impact you've made. I have to ask you, I'm sure we're here to make impact in this world. Entrepreneurship is all about making impact. And the ability to affect millions of lives. How many users do you have of your app?
So we have more than 30 million monthly active users using our apps right now.
Think about the impact you're able to have on people's individual life. What does impact mean to you on a personal level? And I guess also on a professional level.
Yeah, so I think in my perspective, I wanted to create a startup from the get-go to make a dent in the universe, right? Maybe it's a cliche, right? But I thought that we can actually make a difference in people's lives. And making an impact in our case is helping creators, right? It's really important for us to help everyone who wants to create something to be able to do it easily, right? We were 4 PhD to computer science in the Hebrew University, and one guy who studied in law school. And we've seen how hard it is to just transform a thought you have in your mind to something that's material. Material in the sense of digital art, right? And make something happen, right? I'm using Adobe tools like Photoshop since '98, right? So I was a Photoshop expert when I was in the university, and still, a lot of manipulations I wanted to make to photos and videos were really hard. And also friends of mine who wanted to edit these kind of media, they needed to go to courses and go through a month or two of courses to learn these apps. So I've seen how hard it is, and we really wanted to democratize creativity and let everyone being able to create whatever they have on their mind and also become successful as creators. And I think, together with the entire shift to mobile and more people using technology, right, having smartphones in the palm of their hand, it really combined, this vision with this vision really well, because then we just could let everyone create and also use the very powerful machine they have in their hand in order to become successful.
So then I have to understand, before Lightricks, before everything else, there's a young Yaron. Yaron that went to college. Yaron that served. Yaron that grew up in a town, an adolescent, teenager, a child, an infant. Who's Yaron? Where are you from, and what was your upbringing like?
Yeah, so I grew in Israel, in Ramat Gan. I'm now 37 years old, so born in like the mid 80s. Since the first day in my life, I remember myself playing with computers. So actually, my dad got us the first IBM compatible PC in Israel.
Wow.
And I was born with computers. So my family actually had computers. They had Apple computers before I was even born, right? And additionally, my dad and my sister, and later on, I also became a ham radio. So if I don't know if people know today what is a ham radio. So it is a hobby where you build antennas. All the hackers from the 60s, the 70s build antennas. You build radio communication devices, right? And then you can communicate with people in your neighborhood, but also with other people like in really far islands around the globe, and with space shuttles, etc. So it's a really cool hobby. It involves both the community of people you talk to, right, but also the hackery and technology. So I was pretty much born into it. There's a ham radio station still in my parents' house. Lots of equipment, lots of antennas and wires all over the place. And when my friends came over, they were quite shocked to see all this equipment, and it was really cool playing with it. So this was like the environment I grew in. I was very much attracted to computers from the get-go. Started to play computer games. I remember myself playing Digger on a black and white screen, right? It was like, I don't know, probably 89 or something like that.
Way before
Yeah, so there were computer games back then. I learned English actually, but because back at the days there was DOS, right? No operating system with graphical user interface, and I needed to understand like what to type in order to play games, right? How to you type I don't know deer, and how you load like the computer, and how you load games. So when I was 4 or 5, I just started learning English because the English letters were on the keyboard, and I wanted to play games, so I needed to learn English. So I started doing that. And eventually I found myself in 3rd grade. I moved to a gifted children class. I stayed there until the end of high school. And I continued, playing with computers, building them mainly, on the system side. Like I knew how to build, like tear down and build a computer blindfolded. Very much enjoy this, playing with hardware. And, these were the days where everything, it's not like today where you go to an Apple store, right, buy the Mac and you don't know what's inside, right? You can't open it because the screws there are custom, etc. Right? There were computers, you can just open them, lots of cards, you could play with them, switch them, see what happens, right? It was really, really playful. So I did a lot of, what's called right now, IT, right? Playing with computers, setting them up. And also, I was always like the go-to guy when something goes wrong with computers, for my friends, for, people in the family, etc. And I also was heavily invested in BBSs. Also, don't know who knows what a BBS is right now. It's a shorthand for bulletin board systems. So before the internet was born, there were people who actually used their landlines with modems to open like some sort of forums and file sharing applications. These things were really, really slow, right? You connected to a BBS with like a modem that can transfer like a kilobyte a second. So if you wanted to download something, it could take like the entire night. And if you're like my mom, were picked up the phone because the modems use the landline, right? So it just got disconnected and I got really angry. So this is how I got into, communicating with other people, learning about other people, how they use, computers, talking with other people over bulletin board systems. This was around like 95. And later on, when the internet started, I moved to, IRC and moved to communicate with people there and, with communities that are interested in gaming and in computers. And that's basically, I think, summarizes my adolescent days. Maybe I can also say that I wasn't only, it may sound like I was only dealing with computers in my life. So that's really not the case. I was also, in the Boy Scouts until the 7th grade and very much, very much social guy. And also as someone who's, is coming from a family of teachers and engineers. I also find myself as one of these guys, right? I all very, very care much about education and about, teaching values to, in that case, it was, my guys who I was the guide of in the Boy Scouts, but later on also in the university and now in Lightricks.
Wow. Okay. Good. Because I was about to ask you, did you ever hang out outside and meet people face to face? Okay.
Yeah. So I played a lot of soccer. Right. It was I think like my friends from high school, we were really good friends. We're still still in touch with some of them, and we had really great connection. But I think it besides the social life, it was always like half and half, right? Always like about dealing with computers and understanding like what, like playing games and understand like what is cool, what is new, right? It was like things were changing very in a slower pace than today, right? Where every day you have like a new thing. So this really attracted me. But on the other hand, it was really important to me and also, to my parents, obviously, that I will go out and see some friends and, and they, for them to come and visit, my place, etc. So, yeah.
Wow. So then, like, a boy that grew up in your town, like, obviously involved in Boy Scouts, which is a lot about, mentoring, a lot about making impact, and helping people become better, which is incredible. Then obviously involved in technology. And, how did you find your way into entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so I think that it's interesting because my parents never really pushed me towards like being excellent, right? Like I actually remember this day when I passed the gifted students tests, and I needed to choose whether I'm going to stay in my current elementary school or move to a different school, to a different class, right? And I still remember this to this day, where my mom actually told me, listen, like there are a lot of people like that you don't know yet, that you have to meet. All your friends right now, you're going to leave them. Do you want to make this change, right? And I said yes, but if I would say no, they wouldn't push me towards this decision, which obviously, it's one of the probably biggest sliding doors I've had in my life.
Right.
But they let me decide, right? And even in high school, like I wasn't a really good student, right? I had like really bad grades. I even remember that I thought to myself, hey, I'm only going to excel in like physics and math and robotics. I did really cool projects in robotics, and everything else like I really don't care about. And I found one of my grade sheets like about a year ago in my parents' house, and like people were shocked to see like I had like really terrible GPA. And so everyone who listens to this, you don't have to be a good student to be a good entrepreneur. Maybe the opposite is true. I don't know. I haven't done any statistic about it. So no one really pushed me towards, being a great entrepreneur. You have to make a dent in the universe, etc. I think it started when I joined the army and I went to A200. And then I served. I actually had a really weird like course of serving there. I initially joined as an IT guy to the commander of the unit's office, and he always talked about how it's very important for everyone to be excellent, right? And how excellence is the driver for the organization. And I've met a lot of people who had really great ideas, and the organization actually let them pursue these ideas, try them, and some of them became really successful and allowed us to gather really interesting intelligence, right? So that really drove me to, hey, maybe I do need to be really excellent, right? And all the people there, there are amazing people. I'm sure you interviewed, people who served in A200 in the past. So really amazing people. It was pretty shocking to me that, I was always the go-to guy in everything computer oriented. And I met a lot of people who are smarter than me, better than me, more knowledgeable than me. So it makes you a bit humble on one hand, but on the other hand, it allows you to do really, amazing things with these people. And when you have like really big hurdles that you eventually manage to bypass, right? Or walls you manage to break, it really gives you a lot of confidence that with enough resources, with enough time that you dedicate, you can just break any wall. And this is something that I only learned in the army, right? Because we had really tough projects we needed to achieve, we needed to solve, and it eventually, I think, I don't remember even a single time where we failed. I mean, initially we failed many times, right? But we managed to break every wall eventually. So I think this, feeling of confidence where you can actually achieve anything in the world is something that I think I'm setting to myself as a goal in my life, to teach as many people as possible, right? Because I think that everyone can get to an amazing level of, being able to achieve things that he or she doesn't even recognize that he or she can do.
How do you teach that?
Sorry?
How do you teach that?
So I was a teacher in one of the elite computer courses in the army. And basically, there's a curriculum in this course. You gather a lot of really talented people, but and you have a really, very precise curriculum, what you're going to teach in every day and how long it's going to take. But I think the most precious thing that we teach there is exactly this, right? Is that everyone is being able to accomplish like really, really hard tasks. And the way that we do it is it's something that's really hard to do outside the army, but you have a closed forum of 20, 30 people doing this course. And it doesn't matter what kind of exercises you give them. The point is that you're not going to help them a lot, right? And people are going to initially get really frustrated because they're trying to be successful. They're trying to solve something, but they can't. But on the other end, they can't really run away, right? Because they're in the army, they have a chair, they have a desk, they have a computer. You can't really just, say, oh, I'm just going to my mobile phone and, browse TikTok or something, right? You have to solve this, and you have other group of people who are very talented, and you want to succeed as they do, right? But the interesting thing is that everyone thinks that they're like the one who is not who can solve this challenge, where everyone is trying to solve it. And eventually, the wall's starting to crack, right? Because people are sitting on it for a couple of hours on a problem they didn't stumble upon before. They didn't know how to solve it at all. They read a bit of documentation and thought about it a bit, and then they're solving it. And when you're starting with small exercises, and it's getting bigger and bigger, and then you have bigger projects and more ambitious one, and you're starting to work in a group and not just alone, and you build it from the ground up, right? So I think my challenge right now is to understand how you can create such environment outside the army, right, where people can actually maybe give up and go and watch Netflix or something.
Right. So that was my question. Like, how do we replicate that into entrepreneurship, or someone starting to start a startup? Because a lot of times, like you said, your mission, a lot of it is teaching people that they can accomplish the impossible, and they could go beyond themselves, and they could break the limitations and boundaries and all the obstacles, because most limitations, boundaries, and obstacles are all self-applied to ourselves. It's the stories we tell ourselves and what we go through over there and that end. But like, first of all, how do we break it? But how can we come to a place of self-belief that, that I could go to the moon, that I could accomplish anything, and I'm going to break through every single boundary and barrier that stands in my way?
Yeah, so I mean, it's really tricky. It's a really tough question, and I think we'd had more entrepreneurs in the world if we would be able to teach that. Yeah. I think that you need to have some really strong belief in yourself and confidence in what you're trying to achieve in order to do so, right? So I know, I'm thinking about, the Lighttricks story, right? In the beginning, a ton of people told us that we're wrong, right? That we're doing something that is not going to succeed, that no one would want to pay for our products, right? That no one would want to edit their photos on a really small iPhone device, right? But what they forgot is that eventually, users are, the technology advances and screen sizes get larger, right? And the smartphones got, faster, and early adopters will use anything, right? And they will use our apps and will manage to bootstrap our company until the technology will be good enough to support more and more users. And I think that the core, I think the core thing is just trust yourself, have some trust your instincts, and if you feel that something is working well, don't listen to a lot of people. I mean, we have this saying in Lightricks, right, where it's not just in Lightricks, but we really adopted it, of strong opinions loosely held, meaning that you should have really, really strong opinions with data about why something that you think about is true. But if someone gives you a data point, but it needs to be, a data point, right, that can change your entire way of thinking, you should do it, right? So I think that this is a good way to think about it. I mean, as long as you know that if someone will explain to you why the world is completely different tomorrow, you're going to do a pivot, right? If you have enough conviction, you should go at it straight ahead, break any walls, and just make it happen.
Amazing. Wow. And if there is a wall, you just jump over the wall. Just break through the wall, jump over it. Don't go under it, just jump over it. I mean, that's incredible. And I have so many questions. And I also have a lot of questions about, like, the founding early days of Lightricks, even the story of how Lightricks got founded. But I'm sure that's recorded in multiple other places of how it was over there, how, the beginning story. But I have to understand, like, a few things I want to understand, like, what was the process, first of all, from building from, 5 team members to right now to a team of over 400 people? And, your own process of, like, delegation and learning how to let go and learning how to trust people, because I'm assuming that itself is a whole entire multiple courses that you eventually teach one day in college. So
yeah, so it's a big question. I'll start from the beginning. So yeah, we were a company of 5 founders, which was it made it really easy for us to bootstrap the company, right? Because so for those of you who don't know, we were bootstrapped for 2.5 years before we landed our first investments from Viola Ventures in August 2015, and we managed to scale from 5 founders to around 30 employees just from the revenues of Facetune One and later on in Light. And I mean, it's challenging. I mean, the initial scaling is intimidating and challenging because you're starting to interview people and then you onboard employees, right? And something that was your baby is becoming less and less your baby, right? I was really, really strict about a lot of things, about our code base, about how we develop, about every character that is merged into our production code. And suddenly, you have like 10, 15 developers working on this code base. And one thing that I remember is that, one day I said something like someone did something that I didn't like. I don't even remember what it was. And I had a chat with him and some other people. And I said something about, you're not going to do something like this to my code base, right? And Zev, our CEO, was there. And, he just came to me afterwards and said, it's not your code base, right? It's not, it's ours, right? You can't say something like that. And, it came as a shock to me, right? And I think from there I started, letting some things go, right? Because I understood that, you must give ownership to other people. You must let other people make mistakes, right? Because if they won't make mistakes, they wouldn't learn. So it's part of the learning process. And we also, you make a lot of mistakes on the way, right? And it's something that you need to accept that is going to happen, right? So I think that the first part was actually understanding that it's not our, the 5 founders, baby, and we need to share it with other people who also, needs to have responsibility and have ownership. I think that the next step, in my scaling story was about, the fact that I'm becoming a manager. So I don't think that in any other course that I imagine in my life, I would become, a CTO who manages now more than 150 people. I always thought of myself as someone who would advance in the more professional ladder, become staff software engineer, distinguished engineer, something like that. I never thought of myself as a manager. Even in the army, I was a staff sergeant. I wasn't, I didn't go, to commander's course, to officer's course. I really, had a hard time understanding all the officers, and they also gave me, I was really highly ranked among, the soldiers, but among the officers, they gave me really, bad scores because I really didn't have like good communication with them and didn't understand all these, strategic thinking and planning and all these things. So I never thought I would do these things. And it took me a while to, to actually realize that I'm a manager, right? So it means that you need to take care of your people, but not only that, like I think the hardest part was to understand that I'm not doing full-time coding anymore, right? So there was like one time I just came back to my place and I told my life partner that, I had meetings all day. I barely even worked. And she told me, but that's your work, right? That's what you need to do. And I said, yeah, but I just need to write this feature and I never completed it. I went through several stages of grief in this process, right? Until it finally, settled on me that, hey, I'm a manager and I need and the way to make impact as a manager is actually, building these strategies, understanding how to grow other people, understanding, how to make multiple teams connect together and work together on the same, project to achieve the same goals, to build, shared culture across all the teams. And, all these, like some of these are even more like softer things. Right. And I found them much more challenging than programming computers, because this is something that I knew for years now. And computers they don't have feelings, right? It's not like every computer is a very special and unique snowflake, right? That you need to analyze and understand how to grow, etc. And they're very predictable, right? So it's fairly easy to program computers. To work with other people and to scale organizations of tens or hundreds of people, it's something that's way more challenging, and I learn new things every day. So I think that understanding that, hey, I can make and I need to make more impact as a manager, is something that took a while to settle down.
Wow. I mean, I'm trying to think of the direction to go from there, because there's so many different types of ways how to go about it. But I think one thing I actually have a question on, did you guys choose to bootstrap, or you just couldn't raise money?
So we chose it. Yeah. Eventually, it was a really smart decision, because we still hold a lot of shares in the company, and we really didn't think that we need any external help, which was obviously, you can say it was a mistake, you can say it was a success. Eventually, we're hopefully, a success story, right? Hundreds of employees, millions of dollars in hundreds of millions of dollars in revenues. I don't know whether, if we would get funding, seed funding, etc., what would be the course of this company, whether we would, I don't know, get, sold at any time, in the beginning or the early years, right? Or whether we would reach this stage or a different one. But because we were 5 founders, we had a wide team that could accomplish, developing a product from scratch, marketing it near our CMO right now. He learned marketing for about 6 months when we were developing Facetune 1. He assisted with development, but also, he read everything about marketing. And now he's, our CMO and well known in the world for, our achievements. And so we thought that, hey, we can win the world, over just the 5 of us. And we had one external freelancer, Ayelet, who was also our first creative director. So we created this product, and it was really successful, and managed to bootstrap, right? We also, I must say that we also had a lot of luck with the timing, right? So back at the days, Facebook mobile app install product was really, it was really early days for this product. It was released, I think, about late 2012, and not a lot of companies were using this product. So we were able to do a lot of marketing with really low effort. So there were not a lot of videos at all back at Facebook back then. So we could just, open Photoshop, create a really simple ad. We didn't need, cameras and video editors and all these things that we have right now. And we just, published these ads into Facebook. This is like the early days after we released Facetune 1. And we managed to get a really low cost per install per ad, which is now sounds insane, right? So we were basically printing money, which allowed us to scale the entire business without any external assistance. I'm not sure that if we were the same, group of people right now in the current market dynamics, we would be able to do so. So also need a good timing and a bit of luck.
It all comes in together. Timing, the luck, the people, or divine providence. You need it all to happen in one shot. But you're mentioning 4 or 5 co-founders. 2 co-founders, okay, you figure shit out. 3 co-founders, it's already almost like something. 4, 5, you crazy? Like the amount of disagreements, and how do you even come to? If you have a disagreement, how do you come to agreement? It's almost like its own board. 5 co-founders. People always say don't do the solo founder. They say have 3. But 5 is wow. What is 5?
So as you can see, it worked for us. I think that, initially, so first I think that it was really helpful for us to know, we knew at least partially from before we founded Lightricks, right? So I know Amit, our COO, back from the army days. He was actually my commander for about a year, right? So we knew each other for, I think, around almost 10 years before we founded Lightricks, right? And he was in my lab before we started the company. And Zev and Nir knew each other from the army as well, right? They were in an in like anti-aircraft unit in the Israeli Air Force. So they also knew each other even for a longer time than that. And I worked with Zev for about 2.5 years before we decided to leave our PhDs and start a company. So everyone more or less knew each other. I also met Itai in one of Shabbat dinners in Jerusalem, and we had a few beers since then. So people knew each other. It wasn't like a really, big surprise. And we knew like the mentality of everyone, and we worked a bit together. So I think this was one key key property of making a good founding team. But I think that it's also about splitting responsibilities. So it's funny, but when we had to write the articles of association for the company, we needed to decide on titles. Everyone was programming back then, developing the app, and it was pretty clear that Nir is going to do something a bit different, because he was the only guy who was doing his PhD in AI, right? And Itai, well, he was a lawyer, so it was clear he's not developing anything, right? So when he wrote, like we decided on the titles, I remember we were saying, "Hey, Zev, you're like the oldest guy in the hood, so you have to be the CEO." And Amit, because he really cared about finance, then he was the CFO, although he was also still developing, still being a tech lead back then. And to me it was really clear that I want to be responsible for technology again, because all of the background that I had, and I had like really strong opinions about how we should develop things. I was also before we started Lightricks, I interned at Google, so I learned a lot of things there about software development. But after we signed on the articles of association, it was really interesting to see that everyone actually wore the hat of his title, right? So Amit actually started to taking care of the finances and the balance sheet, etc. And Nir really took marketing seriously, and Zev started to think, about product, and later on about strategy. And everyone right now is pretty much coming from this perspective to managing the company, right? So we started as PhD students who were even researching, most of us the same domain, or worked on the same projects, but now everyone have like learned a new specialization, right? And I think I did like the least the change here, maybe transforming from developer to manager. But besides that, I'm still, dealing with technology all day long, maybe with people, but still with technology. I think that, another key metric that's really important is trust. And this is something that we had really strong from the get-go. We used to say that, a founder is someone who you can leave like a suitcase with $1 million in cash in it. And, you can tell him, okay, you just have this suitcase for a week, and let's meet, in a week from now, and you'll return the suitcase to me. And that he's going to take the suitcase, and come back with it without opening it at all, and, in one piece. So I think we had a really great trust in each other from the get-go. And that's why even when we used to argue, and we still argue, it's very, very clear to everyone that the company goals and the company success is the top priority for everyone, and not anything about, ego and about, I don't know, respect and fame and things like that. We really, really care about the company being successful.
Right. So then, how did you deal with disagreements in the early days? Did you guys just argue it out until the end, or was it like you had a vote because it's 3 against 2?
So we really, really tried not to have a vote. I don't remember a scenario where we had a vote. We actually used to say and still say that it's not a democracy, right? So if if someone needs to decide, like, and still we have these escalation rules, like if, let's say, me and Amit can decide on something, then we go to Zev, and Zev should be the tiebreaker here and decide, and then we disagree and commit, right? I think it's really, really important so that we'll move on, right? It's really easy to delve into, discussions for hours over hours. And these sometimes, you argue like after like a day or two when things cool off, you understand that you just argued on a really, really stupid thing that doesn't even, move the business metric or doesn't affect the user, or, it was just, very heated discussion. And it's just useless. So sometimes it's really useful to go to a third party, make someone else make a decision, and then move on.
Right. Gotcha.
But usually we really try to just convince everyone, right? So we try to have a data-driven, fact-driven discussion as much as possible. It's not always possible, but in many cases it is. And then, as I said, strong opinions loosely held, right? So sometimes I come to a discussion, I have a really strong opinion about something, but then, you see like a metric of something, or you see a dashboard, or someone actually tells me, hey, this task, it seems like it's going to take like a day, but let's see how actually we want to implement it. And then you understand it's going to take much longer. And then, yes, it's loosely held, right? Because I can say immediately, yeah, I agree with you, and then let's move on. And I think it's, in many cases, it's way more important to move on than to argue on a specific point, especially, in a fast-moving, fast-paced environment, creator economy and mobile applications that we're in.
Right. So then, how'd you keep the culture intact or build up the culture from Lighttricks? I mean, 450 people is a lot of people. It's very different than 5 people. And the country, and not the country, the company, I'm assuming, had multiple different stages. It goes from 5 people, and then you hired Ayelet, and then it goes from there to 10, and 10 to 50, and 50 to 100, 100 to 150, 200. Each stage is a different thing with its culture, with the way how reporting works, and everything over there. How do you keep a culture intact, especially at this size, where you mentioned you have, even like you mentioned, you have 150 people, reporting to you. That's a full company in its own right.
Yeah, it's actually pretty crazy to just think about it, right? It's like Lightricks in 2017, or even 2018 or something. It's pretty crazy. So I think it's not easy. I can tell you that it's one of the things that I work on the hardest, right? And it's a lot about communication. So when you're small, it's fairly easy, right? When we were small, and I'm not talking about like 5 founders, which is like very, very easy, but let's say when we were like 30 or 40 people, we were sitting in, basically one floor, right? One building in the high-tech village in the Hebrew University in Givat Ram in Jerusalem. So it was really easy, right? We had like a company sync. So a company sync is like everyone meeting in the same room, and Zev is talking, and people also like feel really relaxed and open to ask questions, right? Maybe challenge you if they think that you're saying something that is it's not for you missed some details, etc., or they think you're wrong. When it's becoming larger, so first of all, you're starting not to know everyone, right? So starting to have, from my perspective, people in marketing and people in G&A, and and people I don't usually work with, and you don't have this like very close social contact you used to have, right? We used to have really deep and private conversations with every employee. But about, when we cross this like 50 people mark or something like that, it just breaks, right? And then you need to start setting some sort of communication guidelines, right? So first of all, you need to have management, because this management is basically the pipeline that does all the communication, right? And so you need to start building your management, and you also need to start dealing with communication issues, right? Because instead of, Zev telling everyone something in a room, it becoming like, okay, we can still maybe gather like 100 people in the same room, just the room needs to become, bigger and bigger. But people may not want to tell you, hey, you're missing something, or I think you're wrong. And this is becoming really, really challenging, right? Because I personally believe that while we have the vision and the high level overview for the company, and we build the strategy, the people who work, develop, market, sell, create products, every day, they see the details, right? And eventually, the details are combined to may combine themselves to something that's really big that we may be missing, right? So it's really, really important to encourage everyone to give his or her feedback. And it's something that you need to do a lot of convincing, right? You need to convince people. Somehow, people are made in a way that they fear that if they'll tell you that you're wrong, you'll be angry and something bad will happen, right? So you need to give a lot of examples to people and encourage them to tell you why you're wrong, and then show them that you actually encourage it. And people are usually really surprised that you want to hear like these things, right? So I think this is like one big challenge. I think some of these things we solved also with transparency. So transparency is a key value in Lightricks. Some people who join us from other companies are really surprised about how much the company is transparent. We have a weekly company sync where we present metrics, and we have monthly financial update. We constantly speak about the roadmap, things we're going to build, speaking about why we want to build it. We have Q&As every week with different guests. So it's always Zev and someone else from the management, and people from the company can ask questions about why. And sometimes they ask really, really hard questions about why you're doing this, or why the strategy is this and not that. And I've seen this competitor doing something else, why we're not doing this. And I think this is something that we keep encouraging as we scale. I think this is like a really great communication channel to everyone, and also like a feedback for us to see if we're actually missing something and what's the atmosphere in the company about decisions that we make.
Right. Wow. What is the secret sauce to the virality of the product? 30 million active users is a lot. And I'm sure every company out there is probably trying to learn from Lightricks' playbook, or trying to dissect the product and trying to pull it apart to see what it is and how it does it. But what is that secret sauce that creates that virality that every single person, that spread and everything?
So I think that when you're working on B2C products, you need to create a really amazing experience, right? And this experience is not just, some, amazing product guy that thought about, an amazing UX for a feature that is a breakthrough, right? If you don't have great customer experience, right? If you don't have the developers to implement it really well, if you don't have the marketing folks who can actually create, these amazing advertisements that we have that market these products and show people the value that they can get from these products, we just wouldn't be able to succeed, right? So I see it's like as a multiplier of probabilities, where you can have a probability from 0 to 1, or excellent amount of excellence, right, across every department in the company, and then you can just multiply it, right? So if you have even one weakest link in this entire pipeline, that it can all collapse, right? Because you wouldn't just be able to release such great products to consumers. And so I think it's a lot about how to work together. How someone from product creates a very an amazing feature brief, but he or she can't do it alone, right? There needs to be discussion with developers and marketing folks to understand like what kind of advertisements work, for example, to understand what kind of what our users are interested in, and do the user research and do an amazing user research, right? Not to find just these two users who there's some undersampling here and you understand things wrong, so know how to do it very well. And also work together with our research department, for example, which is an amazing department of researchers who create these amazing features we have in the product, to understand maybe we can attack this problem from a research perspective, and maybe we can even solve like a UX problem using research, and not just by thinking about a plain solution that the platform, whether it's iOS or Android, provide us. Maybe we can add some magic in here that will automatically understand what the user is trying to do, which we do in many cases, right? So basically, you need to have a lot of people communicating and working together, and try to combine all this information to understand first what you build, and then to execute it really, really well, right? So you must have a really amazing polished product with amazing UX, amazing UI, performant application. Users don't want to wait, right? That doesn't crash. And the trick here is that it's not just about releasing, an initial app, right? As I said before, everything moves so fast, right? The things that were state of the art 2 or 3 years ago are now commodity, right? Yeah, we had like deep neural networks, for example, right? So like 2 or 3 years ago, like detecting objects on a mobile phone, it was something that few apps knew how to do. Right now, you can just download the model from the internet, and with like 2 lines of code, you can run it on your iPhone, right? So you can always keep inventing things, right? Understanding how to push the state of the art, right? Understand like what is currently trending, but also what the hardware of the new iPhones and new Android phones can do right now, and how we can combine this together.
There's a lot behind, a lot to uncover, unpack. Wow. Yaron, I know I could talk to you for another 2 hours and have a 2-hour conversation that's recorded, besides the unrecorded conversation that we could have could probably last for days. I know we could do that. I know, but
we can release a bootleg.
But I know I can't believe like the whole hour has passed right now. Almost insane. Like we didn't even touch the beginning to touch the surface yet. There's so much more to uncover. But let's say we have a young Yaron that is facing the rule for the first time, and he has multiple options in front of him. He could go continue down the get his PhD, become a professor in university, teach computer science, or it might be the future of AI, or you could go work in and become work in some type of space station, probably work for NASA or what is equivalent to something else. Or you could just become a bum. Like, why not? And which is a case where, what message do we tell a young Yaron that's facing the rule for the first time, has so many opportunities in front of it? The rule is his oyster, and it could go multiple ways.
I would say that I think 2 things. One is that everything is achievable, right? So dream big. Don't let your mind play tricks on you and tell you, oh, this is too hard, you wouldn't be able to achieve it. And second is have fun, right? We only live once. So it's also important, besides, making a dent in the universe and everything we talked about, I think it's really important to enjoy the road and focus on that, because sometimes, constantly, we're struggling with a lot of things, and tactically, there are a lot of fires, and you're very busy, etc. But you need to enjoy the road. You need to enjoy work. You need to enjoy your family, right? Remember to take vacations.
Right. Wow. Wow. Yaron, thank you. Thank you. I have learned a tremendous amount from this conversation. A tremendous amount. And one of the things that strikes me the most a lot is your humility. You built a phenomenal, phenomenal, incredible company organization that has accomplished a lot. But to see the humility that you have and the way how you approach every single day as another learning curve, and knowing that you yourself have so much to grow and so much to continue to learn and to accomplish, and to see how you approach it is amazing, absolutely amazing. I have learned a tremendous amount from this conversation, everything about from actual life to approaching startups and building startups. And I think one of the biggest thing is that dream, but don't just dream you could accomplish the impossible. But don't just dream, go ahead and do it. And you just have to do action. And I learned that a lot from our conversation today. And there's no doubt that thousands of people are going to benefit from listening to this too, and they're going to improve their life 1%, and they're going to change, and they're going to change someone else's life from listening to that. So we're creating a whole domino effect of making an impact, of making change, so we can make the world a better place. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Efraim, for hosting me.
You're welcome.
It's been a pleasure.